So good morning, everyone. If you could take a seat so we can start. So, would you like to sit? Good morning again. Good morning. Welcome to our conference. My name, as most of you know, is Cristiana Parisi. I'm the project coordinator of the Reflow project. And it's a great honor for me to have the current acting president of CBS, Inger Askhave, with us to open our City Circular Conference, Reflow and Beyond, and to celebrate the project results with us. So welcome, Inge. You can come to the stage.
Thank you very much. Is it on? Yeah? Great. Perfect. Wow, it's great to be here in this room and actually together with people and doing something which is so important, a conference with a theme of reflow and beyond. It's great to be here. My name is Inger Askhave. I'm acting president of CBS. I've been at CBS for a year now, and I have been so impressed by the institution and the strategy of wanting to transform society with business, and I think this is a perfect example of what we're trying to achieve as a research institution. So today, as it says up here, we're going to celebrate the project results, the outcomes, and the legacy of Reflow. I'd like to start my small speech here today with a story about another project, which is also based on protecting the environment. It's about sanitation and a man named Jack Sim, and perhaps you know the story, some of you. Jack Sim is a businessman who back in 2001 founded the World Toilet Organization. He wanted to give global spotlight to sanitation and advocate for clean sanitation for everybody. So one of his first destinations was for building school toilets in rural China. Later he described how he and his people at one school created a very nice building with toilets and how happy he was with the results. Until he came back later and realized that the principal of the school had moved his office to the toilet because he thought the toilet was more beautiful than the school and his original office. In another place, the toilets were still brand new after a year. And then they explained to Jack Sim, oh yeah, but that's because we only use it for guests because it's so nice, the owners proudly explained. But this taught the businessman an important lesson. You have to adapt the new to the existing, and you must remember to bring locals on board. I'm happy to see that this is exactly what you have done in the Reflow project, a project where you look for social, environmental, as well as economic outcomes, and where it has been natural to bring the locals on board. In fact, Reflow has brought 28 partners from 10 European countries on board. It combines the approaches of very different partners, including universities, grassroots organizations, municipalities, research institutions, designers, and developers. So it's been a very large project indeed, the largest EU-coordinated project ever granted to CBS, actually. And that's something to be very proud of. And a project which has brought universities and societies together. I know it's your ambition that your results from the pilot cities can offer guidelines and tools to other cities in their transition to becoming circular. I really, really hope you succeed in doing this. Because as we speak, I'm sure the waste of materials continues all over the world. Many cities are in need for some circular principles. So I think I better leave you to your work now. I wish you all a wonderful and rewarding day. and good luck with Reflow. Thank you.
Present.
Too much. This is just my job.
No, I know.
So much.
But thank you for being here. It means a lot for us. And right now, we will have a follow-up keynote by Hannah Emerson, the Green Transformation Officer at CBS. So thank you so much for being here, Hannah.
Of course. Thank you. Okay, so I'm a little bit panicked now because actually almost my time is up. And I'm really Danish, so I like to keep time. I was married to a German. I've been married many times, but I was also married to a German. And he said I was more punctual than any German he ever met. So I'm a little bit panicking, but what I'm going to talk about is something I love so much, so I'm sorry, I'm taking 20 minutes of your time. And let me start a really strange place. I will start with myself. Because I have a title called Green Transformation Officer. And I've only been at CBS for, 1.5 years. And when I found out that they wanted to do a strategic project to actually put CBS more on the map in terms of green transition, be much clearer in terms of research, education, whatever we do. I thought that was a beautiful project. And we negotiated, you can see I'm really old, so I have lots of nice titles behind me, and we negotiated my title. And my son, who is in McKinsey, he said, "Mom, a really cool title is to be Chief Transformation Officer." So I went to the president and I said, "I would like to be Chief Transformation Officer." And he said, "No, then it sounds like you're responsible for all transformation at CBS." I said, "Okay, that's okay. Let me be Green Transformation Officer." But I actually think we share that, everybody in this room, because it's green, it's about sustainability, it's transformation, it's about change. And I'm really sorry for the war, as everybody else. But for me, being an officer actually means that you take responsibility for action. I think that's what I try to do. I think that's what you are trying to do in Reflow, not just to talk about things, but to take responsibility for action. And I think that's really, really important. Now, we are a business school, and you probably think that all we talk about is money. It's almost true, but not entirely. Because our strategy, actually, our tagline is that we transform society with business. It's super nice. The board signed this in June 2020. We also have a really nice vision. You don't have to read all of it. It's kind of, the same. Transform society with business by tackling challenges with curiosity, creative new ideas, and collaborative engagement. I must say that Reflow started a long time before we actually decided on that vision and strategy. So you're way ahead of us. But I think actually we share a mission and share some of the same things. Now, to be honest, I'll say a little bit about Reflow first. I'll not be honest yet, no. Reflow, it's a wonderful project, and you've come so long. And I will talk a little bit about some of the characteristics I see from your project. It's an innovation action project, as you all know. I mean, that's one nice money pot at EU, but it's not traditionally the money pot that research universities go for. So this is actually something that really distinguishes. It's large, it's international, you come from all over. It's cross-disciplinary. And I know that that is just a word, but to work in a cross-disciplinary way is so complicated, so challenging. You start talking to people and you think, what planet did they live on? I mean, I have no clue what they're saying. It's so complicated. I'm sure you were there. I'm sure that now, more and more, you actually speak the same language. You work with cities, you work with technology, you work with materials, you work with measurements, you work across different countries. You've just done everything complicated. You work with your units of analysis and not on the side of them. You don't just study them. That's what we like to do. We don't want it to get too messy as researchers, but you actually do that. And you work with these super complicated systems where everything is dependent on everything else, and at the same time you're courageous enough to just jump in and do something about it. Of course you work from linear to circular, but that's again easy to say and super difficult to do. And you work with more than one bottom line as a blended value system, and of course you want to provide tools and processes for real impact. And Christiane has been the coordinator, and I've met her over the years as a really busy person. And the project coordinators usually also wear extremely high heels. So those are some of the things I think about when I think about Reflow. And I think all of that actually makes it a really different project from many research projects. So let's take the next one. Because companies, but also universities, can actually try to put themselves or establish themselves on various scales of how ambitious they are on their sustainability strategies. And I shared with you before, I think, a wonderful tagline. I think that tagline was one of the reasons I went to CBS. I think it's actually the same for Inger, that we transform society with business. But to be honest, and now maybe the acting president should not be here, but I will say that CBS, we are not higher than a 3. We are on, if we have a scale between denial, which I hope is not really a strategy, but but I mean, you say from denial to transformational, I would say that CBS, as a modern, Nordic, ambitious university, we are not more than a 3. We have departments, we have pockets, we have champions who want to move it, but we have a lot of stuff which is not working with sustainability, which is not working with transformation, where we are simply not there yet. But that's, of course, the reason all of us has a job, so it's super nice. Yeah. You have also worked with how do you actually create change? Do you do that by going out, pushing things, starting movements or actions, or do you do it by regulation? And at least in a Nordic perspective, it's quite interesting to see that Norway has now adopted actually sustainability as part of their University Act. We don't have that in Denmark. In Norway in 2021, they have added actually in the first chapter of the whole idea with universities to contribute towards environmentally, socially, and economically sustainable development. Super complicated, but really nice. If we go to our friends in Sweden, I mean, don't read all this stuff, but I found actually this terrible sentence from an, you could say, an evaluation of where the Swedish higher education institutions are after they, since 2006, actually had it in their regulation to work with sustainable development. And yes, when you go out, and that was in 18, when you go out and look at the universities, they have some courses, they have some student activities, but when it comes to a lot of the other stuff around sustainability, you can see that sentence, it's more worrying that about half of the higher education institutions do not have local overall targets for sustainable development in place, and even fewer perform systematic follow-up, of these targets. Okay, thank you. So yeah, regulation is super nice, but even in countries where we have had regulation for quite a long time, yeah, we are maybe not there yet. So I think we have to work from the bottom as well. Okay, so if I have to look a little bit at how can and should not just Reflow, but universities contribute to societal change, I would say that when we look at research, some of the points I would really love to see happening here and many other places are some of the notes I've written up here. I think we have to challenge our own wisdom or even, our own thoughts. We have not to just take the next step in our research and build upon kind of a cumulative or path-dependent way of doing our research. It's super comfortable, isn't it? Because we know people, we know journals, we know theories, but it might not be the only way forward. We have to maybe sometimes do it differently. Now, I've written be creative when we pose research questions, but I mean be much more creative. Think much more out of the box. Go out, talk to people. Don't think you have immediately the right research question. And I think we do a little, too little of that. we have to engage and involve. That's what you've been doing in Reflow. That's the way forward. We have to engage, and why do we have to do that? Because the problems we investigate now are so complex, are so interrelated, depend on so many things that we cannot just take out a little bit of it and then investigate that in our nice buildings and go back and hope that somebody can implement it. It's impossible. They can't. So we have to engage and we have to involve everybody, citizens, other disciplines, stakeholders. And we have to balance that when we are working with sustainability, we are asking people and ourselves to work with really long-term goals, but at the same time, we must create short-term impact. And it's a very difficult balance. And of course, as you know, we have to move from working with small isolated fields to working much more, embracing complexity. And a lot of research has actually for hundreds of years done the opposite. Isolate problems, investigate them, and that has taken us a long time, or taken us far, but now we have to do it differently. And we have to co-create. Don't come up with the answers, don't think you know exactly where you're going. And lots of people hate that. Send in for the EU applications, again, diagram exactly about what you're going to do. But I don't know what I'm going to do. If I knew what I was going to do, it's not research. And I think we are fighting against the system that still believes that still wants to see things in a linear, planning-oriented way. And it's actually not, yeah, of course there's some research in that, but yeah, I think I would like us to go another way. So let it be messy. Let's take risks, because many research environments, I mean, we are working with new knowledge, and actually a lot of research environments are very risk averse, because you risk your career. So congratulations to all of you who have actually done a lot of these things. When it comes to education, let's truly integrate global challenges into our programs. Let's not have it as, yes, of course, we have a course on sustainability, or a small minor, or a master. No, let's integrate it so that nobody who leaves the universities can be unaware and not touched about these things. And let's dare give students a value set. I think actually we are trying to do that now at CBS. I can't talk about that, then I'll be here until lunch. But we are trying to do that. And I think we should dare do that. Not just say that knowledge speaks by itself, in itself. No, it doesn't. We have to provide values as well. And if we just sit here, and I'm happy to see that a lot of you are actually quite young, but you know what? The students will come and the young people will demand it. They want it. I mean, we work with the student organizations. They're way ahead of us in so many ways. So we just have to take up the demand, or even just maybe the needs from the young generation. And in executive education, let's stop just talking. Let's do action learning. Let everybody who does executive education go home and implement things immediately after they've been at that course. The last pillar in a university is how we relate to society, and I actually think that what I'm saying is that we have to relate to society in all pillars, but we must move from dissemination to actually creating impact and societal scaling, and really transform universities, so that's our role. And of course, that everybody, also all of you who are here representing different stakeholders, you are part of our relevant society. Now, 2 days ago, I was at a really nice meeting where somebody who has one of the most sustainable small printing companies in the world, that's at least what he said, people said, hasn't it been difficult? Isn't it difficult? And he said, yes, it's difficult, but difficult is good, because it's not impossible. So let's go ahead, let's create change in society. Congratulations with Reflow on doing that. And I think you're a very good example for us to actually learn from and try to move our universities a little bit forward. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Hannah. That's a wish that we have. You ran away before having your small present,
Super
and actually
nice.
you also have some flowers.
Thank you. Grazie.
So, before we start our first panel today, I would like to give a small introduction. Some of what I'm going to say is a bit of a repetition for those of you who attended the online conference yesterday, but I'm sure that the rest will be innovative and relevant for us. So, as you know, I'm the project coordinator of Reflow, but I'm also an associate professor here at the Copenhagen Business School, and my area of research is performance management and impact. And this is also what we're doing in Reflow, focusing on innovative ways of measuring social impact from the CBS side. But what Reflow as a collective does is way more than that. In fact, we have, as Hannah mentioned before, we have a very large partnership of 28 partners, and our consortium spans over 10 European countries. So, and we have a very diverse crowd that gathers universities, research institutions, but also small and medium-sized enterprises, fab labs, municipalities, and various actors that actually make Reflow so special and would help us create the transition towards circular economy. But we wouldn't be anything without our cities that are at the heart of Reflow. Our cities, Reflow is a 10 million euros project, as you know, that spans over 3 years, and our practices were implemented, chosen from a bottom-up approach by our cities, and they were developed over the years. And our 6 pilot cities, as you can see, chose, when it comes to Amsterdam, chose textile, life cycling, Berlin, water, heat, waste, Cluj-Napoca, energy, Milan, food markets 4.0, Paris, first, material recycling, and Vile, circular plastic. And I really invite you to actually see the booths that our cities have just outside the auditorium here, because they can showcase their excellent work that they have done. And they will also have some time today to do so, as I will say in a couple of minutes. What I would like to show you is a very complicated slide that can be scary at first sight, but it actually kind of summarizes some of the journey that we have been doing. Because what you see on the left-hand side is where we started. As Hannah said, when you write a proposal, you have an idea in mind, kind of an hypothesis to test, but then reality becomes messy as you start implementing your journey. And I guess that, I mean, in Reflow we have evolved over time. And I think the way that our methodology, in that sense, nicely summarizes the journey that we have been doing. So we started with some idea, more of a static representation that had our cities at the heart, but also had a focus on social value, because we were firm believers that you cannot have a green and circular economy transition without societal involvement and without citizens being the key actors of the transformation. However, and we also decided to focus on a few key building blocks, is how we call them at the time, that represented the key elements that we thought were relevant in order to ensure the sustainable transformation and to a circular economy. So we started with society and business, which is our impact assessment and performance management part. But we also have a very relevant technological part that you're going to see in this morning's session, where digital ledger technologies have been developed by our partnership. Then we also have the environmental engineering, so material flow analysis, the environmental part of the circular transition, that is the starting point of our journey. And then a governance structure, which is at the heart how different actors can work together within a city in order to allow for a transition. And then capacity building, because we need also to create competences within our stakeholders in order to enable for an efficient and effective transformation. And of course, communication to raise awareness of our work. And this is the sort of the recipe that we used when we first thought of Reflow. But then as things progressed, actually we realized that it was not a linear journey, that integrating these different parts was actually a recurrent process. It was a continuous learning process, as you can see, that impacted at different levels. So meaning from a basic pilot tools to a societal level as we progress. And we also realized that our actions, the tools that we were creating, the impacts that we were making, actually hit society and the cities at a different level, not only at the basic local level, but also at societal level. So we use this in order to make sense of our journey, but also to systematize this set of tools and models that we presented and we implemented and adapted, tailored with the help of our cities. So I will not spend more time on this, but just let me tell you a little bit more on this conference and how we thought about it. Reflow has, of course, a very varied partnership, but also numerous different stakeholders. And when we thought about a conference that could celebrate the work that we have been doing over the last 3 years, we thought that the best way to do it was, instead of looking at ourselves and sort of patting ourselves on the shoulder, saying how good we have been and what we have been doing, it was really more interesting to engage in a dialogue with the stakeholders that have been critical for Reflow throughout its development. And this is why we arranged a special setting. Yesterday was online and today is in person, where we can engage in a dialogue with international experts in the different fields in order to discuss our research, our results, but also to get feedback and to get different insights from researchers and practitioners alike. So this is why yesterday we focused on public administration, industry stakeholder, research, citizens, and generally speaking, circular economy stakeholders. Part of it has been covered yesterday, but what we're going to focus on today is actually some of the key learnings that we have had in a dialogue with the stakeholders. So the first panel is the circular seat. So we are going to have Ervan Mosman is going to moderate that. Then we were going to have a panel on technology. Dennis Roy will be here with Dinah to moderate, and then we are going to have a space for our cities to actually showcase in parallel session what they have been doing, and these are 2 sessions before and right after lunch. And then the day will conclude with another key element, the social impact assessment that we have been doing, and the legacy of Reflow, to discuss and think together how we can continue with this experience and how our legacy and how our work can live after the 3 years of Reflow. So thank you and enjoy the conference. Thank you for being here. And I leave the floor to Ervan.
Yes, good morning, everyone. My name is Erwan Moisan. I'm director of Ecovala. It's a Finnish-based consultancy focusing on circularity and sustainability. I'm also postdoc researcher at the University of Vasa, focusing on circular business model innovation. And in the Reflow project, I've been active mainly on the capacity building and knowledge transfer activities. But today, actually, we're going to be talking about something else. Not as such, but we'll focus on one specific lens that has been keeping us busy, I think the first year of the project, which is related to urban metabolism. But before I go into some sort of introductory slides, I want to introduce our two panelists. So Leslie Petitjean from Est Ensemble, Paris region, is a practitioner also of circular economy, and she will actually be able to tell us a little bit more about what she's been active in her region related to circular economy implementation. And then we have Giuseppe Grossi, which will take maybe a more bird view on sort of some issues related to circular cities, smart cities. Giuseppe, you are a professor of accounting, active in Kristianstad University, Sweden, North University in Norway, and you have quite a wide expertise in specific aspects that are somehow connected to what we've been doing with Reflow, governmental accounting, hybrid forms of governance, and lately you've been also active in smart cities. But before we open up the conversation, just a little going backward to what we've been doing with Reflow when it comes to urban metabolism. If the slide can go further. Yes. So we obviously, as a starting point, wanted to make cities more circular, more generative. We wanted to design out waste. We wanted to make products circulate longer, and we wanted to actually regenerate ecosystem. And one important way to start this journey is actually to start knowing what we are talking about, which material flow are coming in the city, which inputs are important, what happens to those materials within this black box that is the city, and what happens when these materials are not used anymore, when they come out of the city. And this very simple visualization is actually what some pilot cities have been doing in the first year of the project, so trying to visualize what comes in, what comes out, characterize the material flows, and also quantify them. So this basically has been a starting point, very relevant for our cities, just to have this kind of baseline assessment, which allowed them to sort of set the goals for their circularity action plans, prioritize specific actions, and then obviously that would lead them to the implementation. But basically, the work that has been done, conducted by Metabolic, Dutch-based organization, is to get to that point, which is the results of an MFA, material flow analysis. So here we have an example of what Vejle, the city of Vejle in Denmark, has been doing, focusing on circular plastics. So what we see on the left side is basically what comes in the city, so different type of plastics that actually are entering the city and that are being transformed and used in specific sectors, where we see the final consumption in the middle of the graph. And then, obviously, these materials is either going out of the city through exportations, or then it's used and then it's being discarded from waste collection to sorting to potentially recycling or incinerating. So this kind of graphs actually has allowed us to sort of get the big picture, being able to get some data about which type of flows are we talking about, how big are those flows, and how can we start from these kind of pictures, generate strategies that lead us to specific interventions. But what we've learned through this process is that, yes, there's positive aspects related to it, but there's also challenges, difficulties, and this is something we can actually start addressing with those two guests today. One couple of things I wanted to highlight is, in terms of benefits, is that we, through that approach, have a holistic and comprehensive understanding of the current state of the city, what is its impact. We can also look at this kind of issues from a cross-sectoral perspective, so suddenly it's not just looking at silos, but looking at the possible interconnections between sectors, which is also very relevant to sort of try to address those issues. And obviously it leads us to sort of identify the pros and cons of specific interventions. At the same time, there's some challenges related to that kind of approaches, and we will be talking about that. It can be a highly technical method, for which there might be a need for capacity building to actually be able to understand those type of graphs, to be able to take the right decisions. And then there's the question also of what kind of data, access to data, granularity of data, which can lead us to specific type of interventions. So there's plus, there's minuses, but what I'm interested in hearing from our two guests today is, on one hand, practical practitioner experience related to this type of issue, and at the same time from Giuseppe, obviously taking a more bigger bird's view and say, okay, there are those issues, there are those issues. But before we start the conversation, maybe quick introduction from both of you. Giuseppe, you want to start, maybe?
Thank you, Erwan, for this very nice introduction. And let me say thank you, Christiana, to invite me, because I remember, I have a memory of you in RMIT Melbourne, 2016. You were presenting these ideas in a small table. And just to reply to your green university manager, is not just difficult, but is also possible. And this Reflow project demonstrates this. I'm very happy to bring my experience from Nord University. We have a project related to smart city in the high north, smart city in the Arctic. And Arctic means not just Norway, Finland, but also Canada, US, and of course, Russia. And also one project that is about visualization of smart city performance in Eastern European countries and Sweden. That's my possible contribution here.
Okay, thank you. Leslie?
And is it working? No, it's not. But okay. So everybody hears me now?
We hear
yeah?
you well.
Okay, cool. Sorry? Yeah. Is it okay? Yeah. Okay. So I'm Leslie Petitjean. I'm from a local authority in the northeastern of Paris, Est Ensemble. It's actually a territorial cluster, so it gathers 9 cities, and there are more than 400,000 inhabitants on the territory. So it's a really dense territory, and so in this local authority. Well, maybe just a bit of my career back then. I work for different public institution in environment field. First for the French Environmental Agency, and my goal was more to raise awareness about climate change issue, energy efficiency, and all these topics. And after, I've been specialized more in local sustainable development, and so that's how I began to work for local authority at the regional level and also at the territorial level, and this is what I'm doing now. So now currently I'm working, so since 4 years now, in the environment department of my local authority, and I am a circular economy project manager, and more specifically specialized in construction and building materials. So I will explain it just after. And so when I arrived, when I took my job, the first thing I did actually was to lead, well, back then we didn't call it urban metabolism study because the vocabulary was maybe a bit more complex, so it's also an issue. I want to stress that we were talking about new topic now, so as experts, well, we know what it means, but when we talk about these to local councillors or other colleagues, like in urban planning department, for example, well, they don't have the vocabulary and they don't have this reflex yet. So it's also our role to raise awareness on this topic. So, yeah.
Thank you for those 2 introductions. So before going into the reality of this kind of experience, maybe one question first for Giuseppe. So as we've seen on the previous slides, we have these nice visuals, what comes in, what comes out. So it's sort of a urban audit, right? So from your perspective, what kind of implications does it bring to urban governance, and how can it inform sustainable or circular strategies?
You know, I know that you are very attracted by this word, urban audit, and it's a very, some people are also scared about audit because they believe that it's just accounting and numbers. But anyway, let me talk about proliferation of metrics, that they are dealing on different dimension of sustainability issue, and then now they are available for decision makers, and I think that they are not just within public authorities, but they should be also outside public sector organization. And for example, in our project, we are including NGO activists, and I see that in Reflow you have done a similar work. So the point is, this data, they are available. They can increase, of course, transparency. They can increase dialogue with this wider set of stakeholders. And of course, we can take their opinion. So more data is available. But my big question to you and also to the audience here, how this data will be used? That's my big question. And who owns the data? And this is not just a GDPR issue. I think that this is who makes decision. Especially, I really like in your model and in the project that you refer to cross-boundary flow of material, products, and services. So my question to you, who is going to make decision when we have this cross-horizontal collaboration?
Yeah, I don't know if I have all the answers to that question, but at least you raise definitely one challenging aspect. Access to data, and I think this is something we can talk about later, Leslie. And how is that data, how do you turn data into knowledge and into wisdom so that you can actually make the right decision? So I think this is definitely a key aspect of this type of exercise, is how do you interpret data? How do you access data? How do you interpret it? And how can it be used by the right people who don't necessarily have the technical expertise to understand it, but that will still take the decisions that leads to circular actions and strategies. So that's, you pinpoint definitely here a key challenge. But maybe Leslie, you want to tell us more about actually how this kind of issues resonates with you. What have you been doing concretely in the last years, and how has it been?
Yeah, so as I said, it was kind of the first milestone for our strategy, circular economy strategy. And what I haven't said is actually we didn't conduct the study on all the stream and all the flows. Actually, it was just on construction materials, our study. And there is some explanation to this, like many. Well, first, it was also the moment where we elaborate our circular economy action plan. And so it was kind of the question, okay, do we conduct the study on all the flows, and what will be the goal of it, and what will be the use of it if we conduct everything? Like, for example, Paris City, which has actually more money than us, and I just tell it because it's really important, because this kind of study costs money. And so actually we have to choose between, okay, where do we want to invest our money? So Paris City has conducted a really big study on urban metabolism in all the streams, and they have a really good representation also of the study. But actually, we know our territory, we know the flows. I mean, we don't know precisely the quantity, but we know which kind of flows has impact on our territory, on our cities, I would say. So we knew that the main flow and the more impacted flow was the construction materials, because we know that this is the one who has a more impact on energy consumption, also on production of waste. So we have decided, also depending on the money we had and from the money from external investors, I would say, to just focus on material construction, building material, and it was like the biggest challenge, I would say, it was to collect the data, because actually it's not our jurisdiction to treat and to manage this kind of waste. So it was also a good opportunity actually to gather the different stakeholders around the table. Like, for example, social housing company, we're working a lot with them. Also building companies. It was just a way to also raise awareness to my colleagues who are working in urban planning department and renovation department, to just tell them that we're gonna manage this study and what will be the goal of it, and just to be a bit more aware step by step about the problem of resources and the lack of resources. And actually our first motivation was just to check if the infrastructure in our territory will be enough, will have enough capacity to manage and to treat the waste we're going to produce in the coming years. And actually the answer was, well, actually it's enough. We have enough capacity. But what was really important and that we didn't really expect at the beginning is that we are so dependent on the external resource. Like, for example, the result of the study was we'll produce around 1 million tons of construction materials, of waste, I would say, and from 2020 to 2025. It was because I didn't precise, but it was in 2018, 18 and 19 that we conduct this study. So 3 years ago. It's important. Also, it's interesting to have the feedback from here. So we will produce around 1 million ton, and we will need 3 million ton of material to build our program, our different program. So it just stressed the fact that we are so dependent on external resource, and at the same time we are also working on our resilient action plan, I would say. So it was kind of a really big step just to raise awareness and to be more aware about the fact that it will be a big challenge to provide material for our construction plan, I would say.
Okay. So basically, you used the results of that MFA urban metabolism study as a way to raise awareness and have some kind of generic documentation that can be put on the table for different stakeholders to actually start taking decisions.
Yeah. And also our goal was to identify experimental sites as well, pilot sites, with like to implement actually, because this is our role is also to manage some experimental project around reuse materials. And so it was our goal to gather stakeholders and to begin to build an ecosystem that can work together, but also to put this into action, actually turn this into action. And we talked about this yesterday when we prepared the roundtable. The question of monitoring. Actually, maybe this is a lack we haven't done, because it was just a photography that we have done back then, so in 2019. And the fact that is, like, the planning of the urban planning project, they always move, like the demolition planning move, the construction planning move. And so I would say, now maybe if we do it again, like the study, the result won't be the same. But what we consider is it's not that much important. Now we know that we are dependent, we know that we have a big challenge to address, and more stakeholders are also aware about it. And what is interesting is now the new colleague that arrived in the local authority in urban planning department, for example, they just call me and they say, okay, what can we do? And back then, like 3 years ago, it was really not like this. Like, people were not aware that much about it. So I'm not telling that everything is perfect now, but we can see that step by step, it has an impact. Even though there is no monitoring of this study, well, it's still, it's really useful, yeah.
I see an interesting point in what you're saying, in this lack of possibility to monitor or to actually, instead of having a photography in 2018, having some sort of tool that can evolve as new data comes in, and so that we can reflect and respond on actually the value of the interventions you've been doing. But that sort of makes a nice connection with this question of actually the importance of data nowadays to actually make cities more circular. And somehow I see a connection with smart cities as well, because smart cities are data-centered, obviously. So maybe one question for Giuseppe, it's like, how do you see actually yourself the connection between smart cities and circular cities? We know that at EU level, we are going towards this kind of twin transition, you know, green transition on one hand, digital transition on the other hand. But how can these things happen at city level, and what have you learned so far that can put some light on issues related to this kind of inclusion?
You know, this is a very interesting point. I think that at the EU level, the EU model of smart cities is based on several dimensions, and one is smart environment. And this is clear that circular economy is occupying this important part within the European framework. What I can see based on, let's say, some Nordic experience, and after I will refer also to Arctic cases. Let me say, Helsinki, they had a huge project, European Union project, and they really like to be ranked top in Europe on smart city initiative. But my impression that this information, big data that you are talking here, they are produced by, let me say, the external entity that is called Forum Virium Helsinki. They deal on all data and reporting related to smart city initiative and also circular economy initiative, and they report to the EU. My impression that the smart city initiative externalized in this way create a sort of decoupling between the city and the smart city. And I see that the Helsinki model is replicating around Europe. I see a lot of cities, for example, London, they have an external entity managing smart city and circular economy project. But I see also opposite cases in the Arctic. We have so-called smart village, because they are not big cities, but bureaucracy, local bureaucracy, they were able to integrate smart city initiative, and now they are really interdependent. I see your point connected to interdependence. In practice, local bureaucracy, they are not able to survive without digital innovation, digital data, and also a smart city initiative, they cannot be successful without integration with the bureaucracy. And I think that in several, especially Russian smart cities, we have seen a sort of smartocracy, that smart city ideology and also image. I know that we will talk later about the visual part. They are becoming a sort of part of the bureaucratic dialogue inside. So they are penetrating the cities. So just to reply to your point, once again, it's very important that policymakers, they are familiar and they understand this new flow of information, as you say. And I see a lot of bureaucratic barriers between different levels of governance, for example, local, regional, national, and European. Sometimes they speak a very different language in terms of sustainable and smart cities.
Maybe one way you could jump on that comment, Leslie, is one aspect is that it's maybe sometimes this kind of silos we can see within the different level of governance. I mean, talking nationally, sure, but even if we stick to the boundary of one city, there's already different decision makers based on different departments. What's your experience and feedback on that, actually?
Yeah. Well, actually, from the multi-scale of a local authority, I cannot complain from my part, actually, because we're working quite good with the other territory around, with Paris as well, with Paris region, Greater Paris. We have a lot of scale in France, actually. So, but with this colleague, it's quite okay, actually. But the most difficult, I would say, is more in our own local authority to break the silo, actually. And this is actually the goal of my department, the environmental department, is what it's not just about circular economy, but it's about all the environmental topics, is how we can break the silo, actually, and how we can work more also with, actually we're working a lot with urban planning department, but yeah, with also, I'm not in the waste management department, so how can we work more with them, and it, I know we talk about this as well, but it takes time, and you don't like when I say that it takes time, because we don't have time, actually. But it's important to say that to change the mentality and to change the practice, it takes a lot of time actually. So I've been in my local authority since 4 years, and I can see since 1 year actually a real change of practice. And I can see that, as I said, that my colleagues now, they have really good reflex to when they have a topic address on environmental, to just call us, sorry, in my department. But it actually takes time, and also the fact is, with the local councillor and policymaker, I would say, there are also some change. For example, so our new president has been elected, like it will be 2 years ago in July. So there are new representation, and so we have also to raise awareness to these new local councillors. So it's also the rhythm of politic time that we don't really, we cannot really have, how would I say, la maîtrise, like we...
The ownership, the capability.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we this is the rhythm of policy, actually, that the representative councillor, they change. And so even though the technical and the practitioner, they are still there, we have to raise awareness also to new policymakers. So it's always also a new job to do. So yeah, and this is actually our role, and as a governance as well, which is actually a good topic to stress as well. On the technical point of view, we have a group of referents, like in the different departments, we have a reference on circular economy. So we gather them like every 3 months. And we have now the equivalence on the policy level. Yeah. Because I think like we have one representative or local councillor on circular economy, who is also the environmental local councillor. But we thought that it's really important to have this transversal approach, and that this topic can be shared between the different local councillors.
Yeah, good point. When we were preparing this talk yesterday, I mean, one issue that we were raising was like, how can we visualize actually information in an easy way, so that actually, new politicians coming over without the technical expertise, well, they still need to be able to take a graph like the graph we've seen in previous slides, and they have to do something with it. So what kind of communication, and I know you have some background also in awareness raising and communication and environmental issues, what kind of communication aspects from a visualization perspective can be useful to actually show that you do something, it has an influence on the performance of your urban metabolism. So maybe Giuseppe, you want to start with
thank
that?
You.
And then
First of all, visualization for us is also a research methodology. Yesterday there was a very nice panel with journal editor. Very interesting that we need to be more interdisciplinary. I think that the visual part is becoming essential in our studies on performance measurement. And we have visual, not just related to smart initiative or circular economy. I see that all policy at all level, also European Union is illustrating the EU budget with image. I think that I fully agree with you that image, they are more comprehensible than just numbers. And I think that we should explore more this potential of visualization. And I think that visualization, sometimes it's monologic, so means that public sector organization, they transfer information to external audience in a monologic way without any dialogue. So it's just communication. I see more and more, especially at EU level with the EU budget, the European Parliament is creating dialogue through image. This is fantastic because this is a form of dialogic visualization. So you can receive feedback by citizens, stakeholders, using image, because they are not all professor in accounting or expert in accounting. We have the majority of member of EU Parliament. They don't know anything about accounting. So that's why we need to visualize number in order to create this dialogue, share experience, share values. That's another important part of Reflow project. And I think that visual studies, they cannot be static, they need to be dynamic, interactive. So that's why we are more and more using a dialogic approach, not just at EU level, but I see also local government. Yesterday we were discussing about Berlin. I know that they have a fantastic participatory budget. They involve citizens illustrating images of the numbers. And I think that it's a way to create a dialogue with the citizens. So I fully agree that image, they are an important part, not only of the communication strategy, but also citizen engagement and stakeholder engagement in different policy. Thank you.
Leslie, your take on that?
Yeah, I fully agree actually that the visualization and the communication is a main issue if we want to address more this topic. Actually, for me, there are two things I would say, like the visualization of the flow. And when I saw the diagram from Vele, yeah, well, it's fascinating. It's really, really interesting, but it's so complex, and so I cannot imagine to show this to my local councillor. Actually, like he doesn't have time. Actually, he has a lot of topic to deal with, and so if I just show this, he will say, what's going on? I mean, what we're talking about. So we need to make it really. I mean, I really find that this is really interesting, and it's really. Like we can dive into a lot of really numbers and everything, but for a local councillor, we don't have that much time, and who is not expert of it, we really need to make it more simple and more visualize, I would say, like communicating. I think like the first slide you did, even though like this one, I think maybe it's a bit simple, but I think just to get into the topic, I think this is a good introduction, I would say. And we after really need to explain it a bit more. So this is a part for visualization of the flow, which is a good thing. But actually, what I think is really interesting, and also to help to take decision as well on prioritization, and also about the action and the action plan we want to build, is also, okay, so now we know what flows are coming in, what flows are coming out, but what is the impact on the city, and what is the impact on how it can transform our territory? And how actually, when I talk about circular economy now, I'm talking more and more about local supply chains, actually, because this is mainly about it. It's how you improve your logistic system in your territory, how you make production infrastructure on your territory and on around your territory. And this is actually the problem of not in my backyard, actually. Like most of local councillors, they will agree that, yeah, we need this kind of infrastructure, but most of them, they just don't want this kind of infrastructure on their territory. So actually our challenge is more to convince them that it's necessary if we want to be less dependent on external resources. So we have to be more local. We have to settle this kind of infrastructure of really, like maybe to change also the perspective of what means logistic, urban logistic. And this is a huge topic we are dealing with now, actually, in Est Ensemble.
Yeah, very good point. And I think this is something that has been addressed in some of our pilots. It's this question of, can we have actually, we know where the flows that are coming in, we know more or less that they are coming out, but we need to create spaces as well where those flows can be stored and or / transformed. And that's definitely a big issue that is the next step after having this kind of photography. We're coming close to the end of the session. Do we have the Mentimeter slide still? If some people want to do ask a couple of questions before the end of the session. And in the meantime, I'm just going to ask you, both of you, very quick, short comment about, according to you, what are the key steps or the key priorities we should actually do to make this kind of approaches scaled up at European level? It's been around for several years, but we still need to make those kind of approaches more disseminated throughout cities in Europe. So what would be, in your opinion, the way forward?
You know, this is a very political question, let me say. And I really think that it's a sort of changing the mindset of the, she was referring to local place leaders. And of course, my impression is that they are considering still stakeholders in a very passive way as just users of smart city initiative or circular economy initiative. So I think that these users, they are not just passive users, they should be co-creator of this initiative. And in order to co-create one initiative, you need to improve their capabilities on this issue. And I see, especially in Nordic countries, some barriers because there are some actors excluded. Let me say migrants, elderly people, they are excluded. And I see that also the Living Lab created by this initiative, they are not always successful. And I see that Living Lab is becoming a sort of new label for something that was called in a different way some years ago. It's very trendy, but is not really impactful using your word, because people, they are quite skeptical to interact with public sector organization. That's my perception. Is an issue of information, is an issue of time, but is also an issue of capabilities and sometimes barriers related to language or other technological barriers, for example.
Thank you. Leslie? Yeah.
I would say, I think what local authority, I mean, if we expect that this is local authority who conduct this kind of study, we would need like really practical tools, I would say, because I mean, this is actually the goal of Reflow, and I know that there are also many research on this, how to improve these tools and how to make them more handy and also maybe less expensive, because like 3 years ago, I knew that there were not that many methodologies to conduct this kind of study. It cost also a lot of money. So I think to make, and I'm sorry to also stress this question of money, but like for mine at least, we have to reduce always more and more our expense. So it's a real question, where do we spend the money? And if we have access, and I know like I have a project in France that they develop this kind of tools to make it more accessible for everybody, and like free tools. Well, I think it could be a really good opportunity to develop these tools, just like if you are a circular economy project manager, you just have to push a button kind of and have this collection of data. So there is a huge also issue of collecting, how do we collect the data, and I think it's going to be the next roundtable as well. And maybe a second point as well is, for the moment, this kind of study and also building a circular economy plan is not mandatory, at least for a local authority. Like building a climate action plan is mandatory, but building a circular economy plan is not, actually. So maybe also, like from the regularity framework, I would say, make it maybe mandatory, and it will push more and more local authority to do it.
Okay. So capacity building, looking at tools, easy tools to get access to data. I think it's definitely a good link with the next session. But before the next panelists gets ready, maybe if we have one striking question from the audience without technology, because Mentimeter is not working right now, but we can still, you know, as we have the chance to be in a physical space. I don't know if one of you has one question that you absolutely want to ask to the two panelists before we move to the next session. Thank you. Thank you very much, both of you, for your insights on these issues. We will get ready for the next session, Technology Enabling Circularity. Jaromil, if you want to come over, while I also ask Adam and Florian. Yeah. So we take a 5-minute break while the panelists get in place. So what happens?
I changed the setting to never sleep.
Great, very good. I will hook some things
Yeah,
that
yeah,
you say.
yeah, definitely.
Very interesting.
Okay, cool.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm good.
Was successful.
No, it's better.
Yeah, of course.
One more
I need your,
one more session, and
I
then.
think they want me to wear that.
I will.
And maybe a second one that is
But
on the left side. We can put, oh, this is left side. Okay.
This is what it was like before and I fell asleep. Like, I don't understand. It's gonna fall asleep, I think. Yeah.
Hi, bella. Come va? Sì, 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 sì. Preparati, ce l'abbiamo fatta come diciamo Cristiano. Ci siamo arrivati. Sì. Oh, abbiamo tutto il team di Dine quasi. Beh, qualcuno manca. Poi te li presento, abbiamo uno stand fuori.